Hey everybody, back with another knife overview. Today we're going to be looking at the Something Obscene J Cape. This is the V3.5. Before I get started, huge shout out to my buddy Zach. He actually sent and lent me this one and fully encouraged me to carry this thing and get some time with it. And I appreciate that. So yeah, now that I've had a little bit of time with this Something Obscene, been wanting to get my hands on one for a while. Thought I'd do a quick overview and let you know what I think of it. So this J Cape, and realizing that Something Obscene does also have a mini version of this one's going to feature a 3.5-inch blade. This is the box that it comes with. Pretty standard for a Riot knife, which Riot is actually the manufacturer in China that makes this for Something Obscene. Comes with a little card. It is signed. This one's from 2021. Kind of gives the details of it. So that's definitely pretty nice. Got some magnets on it. Really nice box and packaging. This version is actually going to be what they quote-unquote murdered out version, which you'd say, oh, there's probably a lot of black on this knife, and you would be correct. So this one's going to be DLC coated as far as the handles go, and it has black titanium hardware, and then the blade is also DLC coated. This knife, so realizing that they do also make a flipper version, is going to be the thumb stud actuation. All the hardware on here is going to be Torx, and it is running on bearings. Really smooth action. The blade on this one is going to be CPM 20CV. It is worth noting though, so if any of the Something Obscene J Cape aficionados out there may notice, this is actually going to have the aftermarket pocket clip and the back spacer from Something Obscene, and Zach actually provided me the stock hardware for it. So the normal clip kind of looks like a lightning bolt. The back spacer is plain DLC coated. This one adds a little bit of pop and flair. I'll try to include a picture of kind of what it looks like, but I love this aftermarket. Well, I use that in air quotes. It's purchased from Something Obscene, but I kind of love these like Zerk titanium upgrades. But it should be noted that on this knife, that is going to be a $265 upgrade to this knife. So there's that. And with that, we'll get to the MSRP for this one. It is going to be $425, and this specific version is from River's Edge Cutlery. So with that, we're going to make a few comparisons and we'll jump into my overview. The first comparison that I wanted to make to the Something Obscene J Cape 3.5 is going to be a Strider PM2. So it looks like that. The next knife I have here on my trusty table is going to be a Benchmade bug out. So the J Cape as compared to a Benchmade bug out. Next, we're going to look at a Chris Reeve Sebenza 31. So this is a large Sebenza. It looks like that. And then finally, busting out old girl here, the Strider SMF as compared to the J Cape. Looks like that. All right, so my first observation upon picking up this knife, and again, I've kind of, to be honest with you, I've seen these around. I've never pulled the trigger on one. Don't really know why. Maybe it was a little bit of the price, maybe it was a little bit of the design, but this is certainly a very unique knife. The blade shape and then the grind, which we'll get into, well, I guess I'll do it right now. So this grind, like, it kind of reminds me of like some of the older like Microtechs that did like a nightmare grind, but the blade, it's for looks, right? So like the blade geometry does not change. So I mean, which I do think is a good thing, but it's kind of like a fake geometry thing. But I mean, you would be able to regularly sharpen this knife. You're not going to have to deal with two different angles or anything. It really is just whatever work they did to the blade itself, but that does not translate to the actual edge of the knife. So I thought that was kind of unique. This is also a very tall knife, certainly very short and wide, when it's closed as compared to a Sebenza 31. We'll look at it like that. So again, this is a 3.5-inch blade. It's very tall, but I will say that it is comfortable in your pocket. It didn't feel cumbersome or anything like that, but based on the, extra handle height, as well as, I mean, this blade is absolutely, it's super tall. That's kind of what you get for that. So it's very short and wide. I think like the coolest thing about this knife, at least from my perspective, is like even if we didn't have these, this fist on here with these brass knuckles and this lightning bolt, I feel like this profile is very unique. And as soon as you see it, if you're in the knife community at all, or the the hype beast world, you know exactly what this knife is, and that's really cool. They kind of stepped out and they weren't like, oh, we're not going to make a really traditional design. They kind of stepped out of everyone's comfort zone and came up with their own entity, and I think that is really, really awesome. My next impression of this knife, upon actually having it in my hand, and I'll try to post a few pictures while I'm talking, but this knife has the most internal milling that I have ever seen on a knife, actually. And it does wonders for the weight. I don't have the actual weight of this knife, but it is very lightweight, and you can attribute most, if not all of that, to the internal milling. Like, I mean, they went deep and they went wide with this internal milling here, and it really changes the feeling of this knife. I think if it were, solid titanium handles, it may be a little bit too Medfordy and just bulky for me, but they did a great job kind of thinking of the end user and what they might be looking for. The next observation that I had was just that this is like a larger than life kind of like biker gang looking knife, between the blade height, the thumb studs, which these things are just absolutely massive. Like if you ever miss one of these thumb studs, like, dude, you drank a little too much, because I mean you hit them every single time. They're absolutely crazy. My one kind of like critique for this though is like, I mean, so certainly internal milling, they knocked it out of the park. They have that in spades. Flipping this knife over, the one kind of question that I didn't get answered or didn't understand was they did not do any milling to this lock bar right here. And I don't know. I mean, like I have very large hands, but sneaking my thumb in here is kind of challenging as far as like knives of this size or shape or look go. And this whole knife is very smooth. Like there's no sort of like frag pattern on here to give you more real estate, anything like that. And I think traditionally knives that are smooth titanium and DLC coated do kind of, I don't know, they kind of struggle with being slippery knives. And whatever they did, they put a little jimping here on the lock bar, but presumably that's for when you're locked into a more traditional grip here. It's kind of a hard lock bar to sneak your thumb in there and actually actuate it. So I don't know. I mean, that was kind of a question for me. Like I do, like I love the look, love the ergonomics of this knife, the size, etc. But when you make a knife that's this kind of like beefy and in your face, it would be really nice if they made this lock bar, being able to actuate this frame lock a little bit easier. The next item that I wanted to talk about with the Something Obscene J Cape is going to be the grips on it. So although this does have a choil right here, it is definitely not 100% usable. I'm kind of like, if I had to put a percentage rating on it, I'd give it about a 30%, in that like if I really bared down on this, I would be bleeding for sure. But other than that though, I really do like the jimping ramp here. I think that's something that not a lot of knives do, but the ones that do, it sticks out. This jimping ramp and the quality of jimping is very good and appropriate. Like I really like it. The next observation that I had was, this being the murdered out, again, I have to keep putting that in air quotes. That's a pretty loud term these days. But the DLC and how it wears. I don't know how well the camera will pick it up. I'll try to take a few pictures, but on all the edges, which again, I don't really care. I don't know how much Zach used this knife or anything like that, but certainly around any of the edges, this DLC is wearing off the titanium. And it's not like an anno finish where it's like, oh, it sticks a lot better to aluminum, for instance. I don't really know, but anything that is coated like this, and whether this is like rubbing against your, pants, etc., or just like your grip here, this DLC coating is going to wear off, and it has started to wear off. So definitely keep that in mind before you go jumping for the murdered out version, I would say. I also want to make another plug though for this quote unquote bling kit, which has that backspacer and this other pocket clip. Like, I was never a huge fan of like Timascus or Zerk Titanium clips, but this thing looks so clean and pops with like that extra purple and blue that you get from the backspacer and the clip. It's pretty impressive, I'll be honest. Like, I was a little bit, hesitant when I was like, oh, cool. Like, you can spend $265 extra on this knife, but that really does make it. I really love what that bling kit does for the look and function of this knife. And that concludes my overview of the Something Obscene J Cape V3.5. Again, this knife being made by Riot. In conclusion, I think this is a very unique knife. It is certainly, no one can argue, it is a hype beast, like drip piece, right? Like, I mean, the people that have these are into hype gear, etc. But it is actually, like, if I look at it just from a very, run of the mill, again, I don't own this knife at all. If I look at it from, just a very neutral standpoint, it's a very quality knife. It's certainly very capable, but as this thing sits at $690 and it being made by Ria, like, I don't know. I mean, good for Something Obscene. I really can't fault them, but I'm sure their markup, or like what they were able to make on this knife, must have been huge with like 4 or 5 G's. Like, I mean, this thing for the price it's a little bit overpriced in my opinion. But with that, I can't say enough good things. Like, I really appreciate Zach letting me take this thing for a rip. Yeah, I think, like, if you want to get your hands on one of these, the best way to do it really does seem, as with all these other knives that drop and people go kind of bonkers for, definitely following them on Facebook and Instagram. That goes a long way to kind of get a heads up for drops. Then you hope you have a good enough internet connection to be able to get one of these. So with that, we'll wrap this up. Appreciate you all tuning in, and we will see you next time.